All right. And now it didn't do it. That's amazing. Here we go.
Ta-da!
That
And we're
works.
live.
It's a troublesome
Rebecca.
start, hence
Yeah.
a little bit delayed in many contexts delayed, context delayed.
Yeah, context delayed. It's very hot here, and for some reason, everything is very, very slow.
Mm-hmm.
But here we are, and we would 19th episode of InSession, and we are really, really excited about the show, and would like to give a very warm welcome to our good friend Sahar Homami, who happens to be a crafter of very beautiful and evocative stories. Working in the realms of audiovisual and generative art, noting and coding, and of course calligraphy as the backbone behind all of that. Welcome, Sahar.
Thank you so much for having me.
And also really very well connected also to Mutech. Just want to, there's this nice connection. You have been living in, or you lived in Canada for quite a while. So
yes, indeed. I spent a decade, more or less, full time in Canada, and now since 7 years, it's part time. Yeah.
Nice.
You still, yeah. So today, we're going to be taking a deep dive, as we always do. This time into the exciting new possibilities of working with text brought about by the new official update, the new text comp built by Rob McConnell, who is with us today, and Malcolm Bashar. But Rob, welcome to InSession, and thanks for both the text comp and joining us.
Glad to be here.
Nice, yeah. This is the perfect case study here to test a lot of the features. Sahar, you are basically testing a lot of the features out, because
Yes.
you are not just dealing in traditional Western or Latin text, but your calligraphy, it takes that much further.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
Just a little background for people who don't have the pleasure to know you, Sahar. So you're born and raised in Tehran, and then you got your bachelor in engineering in Iran, and then you came to Concordia and got your bachelor in computational arts.
Yes, correct.
So can you tell us a little bit about that trajectory? I mean, looking at your CV, there's all this calligraphy, storytelling, and then engineering, and then computational arts. So how did that sort of unravel? Or
if you've ever had any acquaintance with Iranians, or generally people who are coming from the MENA region, I would say, there's always the family and the society pressure for people who are coming into continuing education to acquire a level of education that would be something they can put into use, so to say.
Right, practical.
Something practical. And my story in that sense is a very classic story. When I was growing up, I was always, since I was very young, since 10 years old, I was put into calligraphy classes, thanks to my mother, who saw something in me at the time. So I basically started learning calligraphy as an instrument, and that's how I see it today as well.
As an instrument.
Yes, in a musical instrument, so to say. This is the closest comparison I can have for it. So just as sometimes young children are put into classical music schools or take classical music as an extracurricular activity, like a piano or a violin, and they grow up with that. That was my trajectory with calligraphy, essentially. And so today I really look at that as like my pen and paper essentially was my instruments, and I grew up in that world. At this point is a bit of a chicken and egg. Maybe my mostly introverted character also was very happy to just have a paper and pen and just do my own thing. Or maybe it was the other way around, but I think it was just a very happy place for me. But essentially, what happens is I always continued doing the calligraphy until I was 18 years old, where throughout all these years, I was going to this school of calligraphy. Like calligraphy in Iran is considered to be a very prestigious kind of art. There's a kind of like a technical almost university for it. It's not a university, but they have a grading system and they have a certification system, and it's very legitimized. And also they have now like since maybe a decade or so, they also have branches outside of Iran. So if you get educated in a branch outside of Iran, they do yearly exams via the embassies, and it's a very established process, essentially. So anyway, so by the time I was 18, I had gone through a lot of these levels and certifications, and I already had a mastery level in calligraphy. And that was what I wanted to continue, but my parents convinced me that I could always do that on the side, and because I was already good with physics and chemistry and mathematics, why not just continue doing something practical? And so that's how I went into engineering, and I did the material science for a couple of years before leaving for Montreal. Yeah.
It's amazing. So obviously calligraphy very much informs your work practice, your art practice. And I guess, would you say engineering does as well? It must, I mean, to a degree.
It does, absolutely. I think perhaps it took me a while to really see the connection. But especially today being an audiovisual artist and programmer, I can see how everything is connected, and there was definitely that background in engineering is what brings me to what I do today, and my draw to generative art, to algorithms, to want to have logic next to the artistic side of things. It is all connected, definitely. I sometimes see myself at this really interesting intersection of like this sort of symbiosis of events that is happening by like my existence. Like I don't know of very many people who are have a similar trajectory like myself, who know calligraphy and have a background in engineering, and now they are doing art. And I'm grateful for all of these pieces of knowledge that has brought me to this point.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, the piece that we were just looking at, Fana,
yeah,
is can you talk a bit about that, because that's very much it's a word that's coming apart, right? It's
yes. So this project is I don't know if I can say that, but it's actually a very personal piece, even though it might not be very telling. It's not exactly a self-portrait or anything like that, but it's coming from a place that's very close to my heart. Essentially, Fana is to do a literal meaning is annihilation, or annihilation of the ego. It means to die before one dies physically. It's this idea that is possible to know existence truly only by overcoming the ego and reaching a state where the conscious self completely vanishes. Without going too far into it, the word fana itself is coming from the practice of Sufism, and I was inspired to use this this topic basically. Coincidentally, when I was going through the poetries of Omar Khayyam, which is a 12th century Persian mystic poet, which coincided with my own life journey of during the last 10 years, doing a lot of travels and a lot of meditations, and also having psychedelic experiences. And somehow all of these worlds are, coming together. I did have a couple of experiences that you could perhaps call ego death, whether in a state that was induced by substance or in a state where was achieved via meditation. And then coincidentally going through the poetry, I discovered, for example, through the words of Khayyam, that this where he wrote this book called The Conference of the Birds, which is a very figurative storytelling about the story of 1,000 birds that set on a journey to find the wise one. And the wise one, in order to achieve this state and find the wise one, these 1,000 birds have to go through, according to one story, through 7 stages. And this number, the number is not very important because in different mystic traditions, and also in Buddhism and in other traditions, there's always various stages for enlightenment or achieving the state of annihilation and ego death. Sometimes there's 4, sometimes there's 11, and in this case there's 7. And so these birds go through these 7 stages, and by the time they overcome the difficulties and they come through the last stage, they realize that what they've been looking for is merely been always within themselves, and they see that it's a reflection of themselves. The wise one is just merely a reflection of themselves. So anyways, inspired by the story and also the definition of fana in the Sufi tradition, I went through the idea of dividing this performance, or this actually it's performance and installation both. I do. I divided it into 4 stages. So there's the first stage is arrival, and then there's I forgot now. The second stage, I can't remember. The third stage is absolute nothingness, and the last stage is rebirth, which I basically try to narrow down the concept into 4 stages. But essentially, these stages are kind of suggesting that there are several stages or degrees of fana, or knowledge of the absolute, which is uncovering, and then revelation, and finally perception. And that ultimate perception and ultimate wisdom is when you're able to free yourself of your individuality. So this is, in short, this is the story of fana.
And then, practically speaking, this obviously it's an example of calligraphy. So how did you actually, what was the process in TouchDesigner here?
Mhm. So I had a couple of thoughts going through this, and this is obviously older versions of TouchDesigner, so I'm very excited to do a deep dive into new version and the exciting text comp for new possibilities. But at the time, I wanted to try to work with directly with the text comp, which did not really work out, and
Slight intermission.
Yeah.
Sahar will be back.
She will be back.
oh,
Deep thoughts.
Sorry, Sahar, we just lost you for a moment there.
Yes.
okay. Yeah, sorry.
So trouble with the text comp, and
okay, we're back. Yeah, so finally what I did was to use particle GPU and then using individual characters and then connecting them via text 3D and then using them essentially as particle pieces and the particle GPU. That was how I could work around some of the limitations I was facing, because it was just not possible to directly treat the text in the way that I wanted at the time. Yeah.
Marcus, did you want to show? Do we want to talk? You have Bandcamp up.
Oh, sorry, I just wanted, that's just an addendum, because before we talk more in TouchDesigner, because the Fanar performance was something that you presented, I believe, at MUTEC 2020, and then also in Hello the following year. And then just in May of this year, you released the album, which is connected to it, or which is basically the music to it. So you mastered it all. And this is is that your first, that was your first dive into audio, actually? Your first full own audio production?
Indeed, yes, it was. I hope it worked out.
Indeed, it did.
Engineer turned artist, visual artist turned musician.
I know, really nice album.
It's good, a lot of good movement.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was my first attempt, and also I have to say props to my lovely friends who helped me along the way. I'm really grateful to my musician friends who really guided me through this throughout the composition time, and also in the end for mixing and mastering. I always had the generous support of friends throughout this process. Yeah.
Yeah, without friends and community, we would not be here. There's another beautiful piece, the one with Marcus. Can you bring up, or I'm not sure, the one with the throat singers. That was it?
Oh.
Yeah.
What was the name? That might
Raw. Correct.
The name is yes,
Raw?
this one.
Oh yeah. Right.
It's actually that project is called Ketimawi, the one with the throat singers. Yes.
Sorry, which one? Okay, Katin, is that?
Yeah.
You can go.
Oh yeah, there it is.
It's the one. Yes, exactly.
There we go.
Can you tell us a little bit about how that originated, and also, if I'm correct, you're creating, you're visualizing the sound waves of the throat singers, and it actually looks kind of like that.
Yeah, this is one project that I truly enjoyed also because it was a collaborative project and truly talented artist. So I was approached by Maz Qaderi, who's also based in Toronto. He's a new media artist and director, and I was approached by him, and he basically wanted me to design a generative system for this performance with Silla singers who are Aboriginal throat singers from Alberta, I believe. I had some initial conversations with the sisters, and they were generous enough to provide me with some pictures about their habitat, and also we had some conversations to get acquainted. And finally, I was very much inspired by their singing to design this generative system that was responsive to them singing in real time. This performance also, if I remember correctly, had a couple of stages, and so it went into an Aboriginal conceptual storytelling where we were going through a stage where they were estranged, and then they were in a conflict, and then they were coming together, and so we designed basically different visual treatments for each stage. And yeah, I'm very one of the I cannot say that for everything, but one of the few times that I'm happy with what I did.
It's really gorgeous project.
Thank you.
Yeah. So what are you headed towards now? What are you currently working on and exploring? Which is kind of leading into what we're going to be doing today, but
yes, absolutely. So I think my journey is going more and more towards working with text, and I love working with text so much, in analog or in digital, and also the way I see text is always. I see text as form, and I see it as knowledge, and I also see it as a way of connection and communication. There's so much to language that is just is truly fascinating. So I think my journey is going more and more towards finding different ways of displaying that, and as always, I love to come up with meaningful.
oops. Sahar will be right back.
All right, then I'm back. Yes, and so as usual, there would be some stories to tell. In the next chapter that I'm producing this year, I'm working with data visualization. So which is what we're going to do today as well. So I'm very much at this point investigating different ways to treat text and also to extract data. It's a part of this bigger project I'm doing to say very briefly under the umbrella of data activism, and the idea of exposing our own data and hopefully being able to display the data in the way that we are faced with our own unconscious of the web, and understanding what it is that we're doing, and how are we tapping into this
Data.
I'm not talking, I'm talking to myself. I put up these other pictures because you're also teaching. And I guess when you're teaching, then this is not just the technical concepts, but you are perhaps also delivering process ideas, like your process. Is that so since you're working a lot with calligraphy, is that part then of the teaching, or how does that go into teaching when you calligraphy to computer mouse? How does that work in a process like that?
So maybe part of it is because I cannot just do a technical workshop. Like I find there's something missing. I do these TouchDesigner workshops that are called storytelling in an audio storytelling with the new medias and storytelling in an audiovisual environments. Not particularly calligraphy, but I do go through these basically the first half or the first part of my workshops are always dedicated to talking about different ways that we can do storytelling, whether it's through the usage of abstract storytelling, linear, non-linear storytelling, how to create an emotional arc for the audience, how to look at color and how to look at different ways that we can convey a story. And I think this is perhaps coming from a personal pain point where I've been exposed to a lot of amazing performances and presentations of very talented artists who are very technical, but the concept is lacking. And if I can play a part in bringing this idea to some people, that it's equally as important, if not more important, to remember why we're doing this. And to me, it's important to do storytelling because at the end of the day, we are all storytellers, and we're using different mediums to connect. So I just try to bring back, I guess, a certain attention to that, and that's what I do in my workshops.
Highly appreciable. Appreciable. Live cinema. You also, yes, that's also sort of a big passion of yours.
That's indeed live cinema, and I in this path I'm inspired by a lot of artists who are the pioneers of doing video art, like Nam June Paik and or certain artists like Carolee Schneemann. These are some of the pioneers of new media art who established a lot of things for us until today. Or like people like Mary Ellen Butte, who was one of the pioneers in doing live cinema.
Freeze. Can you hear us when you freeze?
Yes, I can actually. I hear you the whole way. I see myself freeze, and so now I've learned to just wait until I can come back.
It's good training, isn't it?
It's good training.
And I mean, that kind of leads to another question that I had. I mean, in terms of what's inspiring you now, I mean, are there any sort of modern day like either, artists for sure, thinkers, science, technology? Is there anything that is really sort of, interesting to you? It could be in the positive or negative sense.
Yes. I'm inspired by some of the new technologies, not everything. I don't possess a lot of FOMO. So when it comes to trying new things, I'm always like taking a step back and really taking some time to think about like what are the actual implementations of it, and if it would really be truly meaningful to adopt a new technology. So at the moment, I'm looking into augmented reality, and that's something that very much interests me. And without going too much into details, but to just maybe perhaps give a little bit of a teaser. I'm going to be working on a different project towards the end of this year, also with the help of TouchDesigner and the new text comp. I'm sure, I have no doubt. I'm working on an augmented reality calligraphy sculpture exhibition. And so I cannot wait to bring these worlds together, the world of augmented reality and calligraphy and TouchDesigner all combined in one.
Very exciting, very exciting.
Yes.
Well, we'll definitely keep our ears to the ground, but you will tell us. Do you guys want to, shall we dive into some of the some of your questions, Sahar?
I would love that.
Sure.
So much looking forward to hear from Rob and Marcus.
Yeah, we talked yesterday a little bit, and we said maybe we'll. I mean, for your new project, what you're looking at is getting content from various online sources. So basically, connecting to a bunch of APIs was one part of the things that you want to talk about, and how to then deal with the data from it.
Yes.
There is, I don't know, do you want to give context to that, or is it okay to, like, how you, or what's the topic of your project?
At the moment, actually, I'm not doing a deep dive into a project, even though there is a concept. But the idea behind doing these data visualizations is actually, I'm doing research on essentially making a library of different practices of doing data visualization for myself. I'm just organizing a database of different ways of visual treatment of text that comes from APIs.
Nice, yeah, library.
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
Yeah, so one of the APIs probably that's easiest to actually approach and that has a big or huge wealth of information there seems to be Twitter, because setting up an app in Twitter is fairly straightforward, and you can get the whole authentication especially is fairly simple, because it provides you with the necessary tokens instead of having you jump through a lot of hoops of other APIs that we'll look at as well. And just to take people through the process, maybe you have to go to a website, developer.twitter.com, and sign in there or sign up for this developer account. I did that a long time ago, and I don't know if there was any special questions, but I don't believe so. And once you have done this, there is the dashboard here, and then your project and apps in an overview. And that's where I just created a new app here, development for production, I guess. And just give it a name, TD InSession, small d. And then you get all these keys here, which you should note down: API key secret, and the bearer token. And that's pretty much it. That's all you need. Now, the nice thing is that, sorry, here are keys and tokens. The nice thing is that with the with the API or OAuth 2 that Twitter offers, and our web client, that you can actually get to all of these different endpoints fairly simple.
Yeah.
And then it becomes more of a question of having to go through the documentation of Twitter and unfortunately find all of the endpoints and figure out how to talk to it. So there are two components that are on the, I think 2 years ago or something like this, I posted a couple videos on how to connect to the Twitter API. And the first one was the Twitter feed here, which deals with the API version 1. And if we go in there, then it was fairly simple in a way that you just had to there was an authentication page here where you had to add your app key, app secret, and the tokens that were provided to you on the app page on the Twitter, like when you create the app. All of those values are actually given to you. Just to switch back to this, let's have a look again. Developer portal. Like for example here, keys and tokens, that you had the well, you have to regenerate them, but you have the API key and secret, and then access token and secret as well. The bearer token is the OAuth 2 one, but for what we had earlier, OAuth 1, you could use this access token and secret. Now they have switched to the API version 2, and with the API version 2, certain endpoints don't even work necessarily anymore. So for example, the streaming, as we discovered, wasn't really working, and that's when I saw this request to make it an API version 2, but then I saw somebody already had done that. So there's two components now with the Twitter API version 2, where all you have to put in is your bearer token from your, like you can copy it literally from the website. Put this into the bearer token, and the bearer token is just adding it onto the web client on the authentication page. It doesn't know, I'm not telling the truth because I'm actually doing this via a callback, but it's basically the OAuth 2 callback, OAuth 2 authentication method with the web client's request callback. And let me just bring that up here on the in the documentation. Web client that class has the request method here, and there's an OAuth authentication type, and the authentication type, that would be a string where you can enter OAuth 2. And then as the OAuth 2 token, that is actually the bearer token that Twitter gives you. So once you have created that app, you have everything you need to actually run these things. And yeah, so this is then fairly simple. The API version 2 builds these rules. You have to first create a rule. You cannot just say anymore, give me all the information pertaining to I don't know, Berlin, but you actually have to build a rule. There's a little link here as well, which oops, that was a little bit a big window, which takes you to the page that kind of explains all the rule building. That's a little bit extensive.
Okay.
But if we are, let's just delete the rule here.
May I ask a question?
Sure. Yeah.
Before we do a deeper dive into this, if you could just for one moment go back to to your app on the Twitter developer website. So could you display one of your apps that you created? Okay, so for instance, TouchDesigner testing, and when you click on the setting,
The settings
the
here.
app setting, for some time I was running into issues and my authentication not working, which I suspected that is connected to the question they ask you further down on the user authentication setting, where you see like they say authentication is not set up.
Yeah.
And then so you have to set it up, and once you opt to do that, they ask you certain questions for callback URL and privacy URL and so on and so forth. This is where I got lost initially trying to set up.
Right. Yeah. So I think what I do here is I use automated app or bot as the type of an app. Because I'm not it was just kind of thinking, okay, I'm not a web app. Perhaps, maybe I am, but I don't know. It's like a self-finding question. What am I? So I identified myself more as a bot, basically. But that was literally thinking that might be the easiest. Then I didn't have request email from user. I left it at read, although read write is actually fine too. I did read write. That's my standard test case for Twitter is read and write. And then the callback URL, I just make that stuff up. Theoretically,
and that is not gonna theoretically that's not gonna run into any issues when you do the authentication.
No, because you are kind of doing a developer app, and so you are authenticated with that bearer token. If you would publish this app for other people and we'll see this in another example for Twitch. In Twitch, for example, when you try to get your when you try to authenticate, you have to visit a website first where you allow the app to access your data. And that is when it needs a callback URL. So I'm not sure actually if this works in here, but in the Twitch example, I, for example, also then use localhost 9980 because eventually I'm actually redirecting it to a web server that in TouchDesigner. So depending on if you need to authenticate other users or if you're just authenticating for yourself because you want to get information, you have to make a decision there if you're going to put something, a real URL or just something in there. Yeah.
Okay, so as long as you're the sole person, you will not be needing that information.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then it just then it's done. Yeah.
Okay.
It lets you do that. Maybe I should, just before I forget, I probably should revoke some stuff. Yes. Always a good idea. All right. Good. So, right, that I should point that out also. Despite, for example, when you're dealing with these tokens, just be careful where you put them and how you save files and if you give out files or if you share something online. Because, for example, this bearer token perhaps allows people to edit my Twitter account.
Twitter, yes.
I mean, not that my Twitter would show anything else but bananas and test images, but this is, despite this being displayed here in the parameter as a password, it is easy to get to it just by with a text board or whatever. So just a note, always take this out when you send your files.
Thanks.
Yeah, so yeah, this is really, I mean, we can dive in a little bit. This is built from inside from 2 web clients. Trying to remember why I have 2 actually. Oh, 1 post, 1 get. No, that's not true. That was another reason. I'll remember eventually why. But the thing is, you send everything to the web client, and the web client talks to the API URLs or endpoints that are mentioned in the documentation on the Twitter developer portal, and you have to format those strings in a certain way, basically. Like the way that you're requesting things is important, otherwise Twitter will not understand it. And this is maybe something we can look into. The extension is right here. And this is also something where you already use JSON, because all this communication is done via JSON. So, for example, to add rules or to delete rules or get rules or something like this, this is the API endpoint there. And I need something to scroll here. And then you have to do things like this. You have to send a header where you set the content type to application JSON, because you're going to be sending JSON. All the parameters and the data that you're exchanging with Twitter will be in JSON. And so that Twitter understands it, it needs to be, the header needs to be set. And yeah, and then you set the authentication type as OAuth2. And the OAuth2 token is the parameter where I entered this token in. And from this point on, I'm pretty much ready to communicate with it. Oh yeah, and I had two clients, one for streaming and one for kind of organizing stuff, like adding rules, removing rules. I do this with one of the web clients, and the other one is just for streaming. And on the streaming side, so after we've added a rule, let's come up with a rule. What should we look for?
Let's look for consumption.
Consumption. All right, and this is our rule. This is our default mode. We can add this rule, and this basically sends it up to Twitter and establishes it as a rule. And now if I hit the start button does, let me just check here in the script. Start stream. Oh yeah, the start stream, actually, this is a really long script, but it's only this long because you have so many options. With those rules, what you can do is you can set these stream query parameters. So basically, you select all of these pieces of information that you want Twitter to return to you with each tweet. And by default, it's all these tweet fields here. So ID, text, author, whatever, created, geolocation, things. And then there's these expansion fields, and these expansion fields can give you extra information, for example, about the author. So author is kind of a class or another group of information where you could get the author information, like the ID, name, username, if it's a verified, description, etc., metrics as well. And this also exists for other things, like for media, for plays, mentioned usernames. I think, is that another? Oh no, that's not. Place fields are extra, and poll fields are extra, and media fields, yeah. But essentially, you can get all of this information here on. Let me just restart this. When retrieving tweets that match your rule. And I just want to see if we actually got a hit here, or ooh, that's a long one. It tells you in the end, it tells you, oh yeah, look at that.
Yes.
In the end, it tells you that there is a what rule it matched, what rule the tweet matched. So I could add another rule. Do you have another rule, another word that we can look for?
No, go ahead.
Okay, Detroit. I don't know. I'm just always going through cities. I don't know why. It's the easiest. We can add that rule. And now we have two rules here. And maybe we get results for those two. Now, the other thing that the script does is it gets all its information via this web client 2, which is the streaming one. And then this, oh, I remember why I did that. Okay. Then on getting information, on the web client 2, receiving information, receiving tweets from Twitter, it passes them on to this parse tweet function. And the parse tweet function actually does nothing. Well, it does something, but it just grabs the data and appends each. It could receive multiple lines per frame, so it splits that up and then adds each line onto a FIFO DAT. And a FIFO DAT is very useful for this because it kind of limits how much data like if you just take a table and just keep adding rows, it might grow to 100,000 rows or something like this. But with a FIFO DAT, you basically specify the maximum lines that you would want to have. It's a first in, first out, so it always appends at the bottom, and the first one is gonna disappear when it hits the maximum. And you just have to append rows, so you don't have to know anything else but just append rows and then deal with the messages, for example, in the FIFO DAT already, if you want to, because the FIFO DAT has its own callback. So it has its own on new row callback, where every time when a row is added, it's gonna give you, I don't know. It's going to give you a callback where you can act up on it, like where you could, for example, parse the data, which is most likely what you would want to do. Take the tweet, put it maybe into another FIFO DAT where you now have multiple columns. Like we could take a FIFO DAT here, keep first row, turn that on, and need to do a little script just to add some rows. The first row to add the headers, basically. Paste text. Dot append row, and we can say maybe we want author and text. Now we have this. And now every time a new tweet comes in, I don't actually know. This is always something I have to try out, but we could now parse the data, and I'm just going to do something quick. I'm not going to parse it. I'm just going to say 501.append row and just say cells 0 gets the first cell, and it's just going to put this there, just as an example. The parsing actually is something that I wanted to come to separately, and the first thing that I would want to make use of is the JSON DAT, because one thing with receiving all of this information, especially if you enable a lot of those fields, is that this is very hard to decipher what you're actually getting. It's just these massive dictionaries of JSON dictionaries. And what we have for that really helps understand the data or look at the data better is the JSON DAT. To use the JSON...
Yes, very helpful. Sorry, I just have to interject because it's very helpful, because previously I had to use a JSON parser externally via third-party web app to go through the JSON file, and now it's just possible to do inside of TouchDesigner.
Yeah, that is not only the. It's also nice to have it with the syntax highlighting too, just to make more sense of it. Yeah, maybe what's important is that you have to convert it to a text dot before you can put it into a JSON, dot. But then it lays it out for you. So now we know that.
I'm just like reading the text, and it's pretty funny.
Yeah.
It really is. Rigmarole, y'all beyond. Wow. No credit to the author?
Sorry?
No credit to the author?
Do we have? Oh, we just have an ID here, or oh no, we have name is dot.
Let's say that's enough.
Oh no! Oh wait, username is OWise1.
Oh, the wise one.
That's good.
Oh, the wise one.
So having it displayed like this though will make it easier also to decipher how to parse this kind of data, how to parse things in JSON. Now the other nice thing about the JSON dot is that it comes with this JSON path syntax parameter, a filter sort of, where you can build up expressions in this JSON path syntax. And I would point you to the documentation here, JSON path. There is a whole page on our wiki which has the documentation for this fairly simple, what would you call this? It's a parsing language or query language. And this is really neat because with dollar gives you everything, but $.data gets you into this first part of this dictionary. And then we could say we want to, well, maybe actually we should say where we want to go. So we have all of this stuff, and first we want to get the text, and then we also want to have maybe the user name. Yeah, text and username. That was what we wanted anyway. So we would say dollars everything dot data, because text is in the data field here, and then it's already dot text, and that gives us the tweet. So it's nice and easy to get there. And I'm not sure, Rob, if you see this. This must be a bug, right?
Switch back to the TouchDesigner view. I'm just looking.
Oh shit! Sorry. Whoops. No swearing.
It was already in the tweet.
Yep. Too late.
Sorry. So what was it?
I was typing the JSON path here to get the to get to the text of the tweet, and after doing this, it returns it with returns it like so. Has like a closing
with one extra
square bracket and a few
on that.
Something to look at later on.
One more log for the.
Yep.
Also, does it do that when you later on convert it into a text or table?
Now, converting that into a table, it would probably create two cells. Yeah. Convert to
That's
table.
a tab.
Oh, that's a display issue actually as well, eh?
Oh, okay. So there's an opening bracket that's not being displayed right now.
It's
Okay.
there, but it's not there. So you could get to it more.
Mm-hmm.
Is that actually, what happens if I do this? Does that work? Ah, yeah. Interesting, I didn't know that. If I put a 0, it's like an array access to the
Oh, okay.
to the result.
It added. Interesting.
Yeah.
And may I also ask another question here? If you wanted to display a couple of results at the same time, how would you go about that?
That is when I would use, when I would go into my callback script here, where I'm getting the tweets in, because that then becomes the JSON. That for me is like taking care of a single big JSON file, kind of, and searching through it, accessing stuff from it. Or if you have one and you want to get stuff out of it, maybe if you have 10 as well, you could do this too. But if you have an undefined amount, I probably would just start parsing the data itself. So in the Python dot where we're dumping all those JSONs in that are coming from Twitter, I would have to import the JSON library from Python, and then I usually have like weird naming because then we have to convert the JSON that's in the cell into a dictionary. So the JSON dict equals JSON dot, I think it's loads. Oh, I should do this because there could be multiple cells coming in. For C in cells, JSON dict JSON dot loads C dot val, because that gives me the cell value. So again, there could be multiple tweets coming in one TouchDesigner frame. So then the web client that would add multiple of those tweets into the FIFO dot, and hence per frame it runs the on new row, and then this is the list of is the list of cells. I might be telling not the truth here. Otherwise it would be rows. It's probably fine. Yeah. No, it's because it's on per row. Never mind what I just said in the last 2 minutes. This is good though. And now we can get to the data, because now we have a dictionary structure, and we can say if we want to get to the data, first I would always make sure, is there actually a data key in this dictionary? So I would say data equals JSON dict dot get data comma none. So this kind of looks into this dictionary, looks for the key data, and if it can't find that data key, it returns none. So now I have a good case to test. Now I can say if data, because if data is none, then this would not be true. So if data, then JSON dict. Oh wait, no, it's just data, because I'm getting the whole field. Data. Let me split this and look at the structure. Text. So I can say text equals, or tweet text equals data text, because data is one part of a dictionary, one key, and the value of this data key is all of this stuff here. And so then there's more keys inside the data value, and the keys here is attachments, author ID, etc., and text. So then the access into this JSON is, I get the value of my data key, and then to get to the text key of that data dictionary, I can have this array access kind of type of. Does that make sense?
Yes.
in a way how to get there. Yeah. And with that text here, I can now say oh, right, we should get the author as well. So the author name is in a different part of in a different key. It's not in the data key, but it's in the includes key. So I'll go into, I can fetch that here as well. Includes equals JSON dict.get, again, just to make sure that it actually has that key. Includes, comma, none. And if includes, and now I have to look, this is users. So users equals includes users. Now this is an array. This can have multiple users in here. So we have to actually do for you in users, and then we have the keys here again for this dictionary, and so username, and maybe because it could be multiples, I'm gonna create usernames equals an empty list, and then I do usernames dot append username. There. And now I can add all of this into the FIFO by saying up FIFO1 dot append row. The first one would be the usernames, I believe. I said author tweet, yeah. So we would have to do something like, we would have to join that list. Usernames, comma, tweet text. Okay. And it looks like we have to trigger that again. Start. And then let's see. Oh yeah. So now there's tweets coming in. Oh, because of the city Detroit rule, it's actually coming in quite quickly. So yeah. So now we have a list here, a FIFO dot again with 10 entries, but with the author and the text separated.
And how? What is the rule that for it to get updated so quickly? Like it seems like it's going to.
I don't know if there's any. I think from what I read on the Twitter page, if you want to have less tweets, because you're also you only have a contingent, you have a limit of 200,000 per month or something.
500,000, and then you can actually you can go through a relatively easy process if you write them and apply for an extended version where you have up to 2 million.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So that would be the other thing to do, or you have to change the rules. You have to be more precise in the rules, because I haven't found any. I didn't see any instructions on limiting the.
Yeah. Otherwise, you can go through them very quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So this is one. Now there is a page here on the Twitter API, on the Twitter developer thing. There is a page that deals with migration between. I just had it. Where did it go? Overview here. there is a Twitter API endpoint map. And this is a good overview of seeing what is possible in the Twitter API 2, what is available in the version 1.1 still. And then you find a lot of things that are not available in 2, or not a lot, but there's a few where it says coming soon. And one of those I think you were interested in, which was the trends.
Actually, I want both trends and the geo.
But the thing is, that still works with the Twitter API 1 by giving it an OAuth 2 key. So the token that you got, the bearer token, and then it's literally just the web client going to trends/place.json, give it the geolocation, and I don't even know what the tweets will be. Yeah, so there we are in today's world. Anyway, but that is your. So you can get to the trends. Just use the API version 1.1 with the OAuth 2 bearer token.
With the OAuth 2 bearer token, yeah, I believe also as you said, I got into reading on a website, and they talked about using essentially api.twitter.com/1.1, which I think is version 1.
Yeah.
/trends /place.json, as you said.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And the I forgot again to switch my screen so nobody saw that, but yeah, the token basically is your OAuth 2 bearer token, and you can set the authentication on the web client that to OAuth 2, and then as an input into the header input to the web client that comes the geolocation, so the ID and the geo ID, and then that returns all the trends for that. So fairly straightforward with Twitter, and the other, and I'm just going to point to it because it's hard to talk through the whole thing. The other component that is up there that goes through a different process is the Twitch, how to connect to Twitch API. And I think this applies to Reddit as well. So it will be a similar process from what I read in the Reddit thing. So if I go to twitch.tv, well, actually, maybe I should point first to the website where you can get to this. Search. It's called the Twitcher. Twitch watching. And this describes the whole process. So where you have to log into, here's the mentioning of this.
Do you want to jump over to the webpage view? Yeah.
Thank you. That's ridiculous. So there's this component Twitcher. The whole authorization process works. I'm having trouble getting the chat on Twitch to work right now, but this might be something else. It explains the whole registration process, as I said, and also explains how to get a token. And that is automatized. I just have to log in here quickly. Sorry. 1 second. And we are going to Twitch. Password. Get an SMS. submit. Okay, and now I need to go to dev.twitch.console. And there is my new test app here that I set up earlier. Very similar. And this gives me a client ID here. So I have to copy the client ID and put it into the client ID field. As well as you need the secret. Control copy, put that into here. And now, sorry, I should switch again. So I added that into the parameters of the Twitcher app. And now what it does is when you hit get token, it actually opens up a website in TouchDesigner. And this is where this callback URL comes into place. So this website is a Twitch website that's just displayed in the web browser comp. And I need again a new token because it doesn't know anything about my other token. So I've got to fill this in here, 1875755, submit. And what it did then, because we entered as the callback URL, we entered this, or the redirect URL, we entered this HTTP localhost 9980. It was actually redirecting it internally to this web server. So then the web server receives the answer from or receives a request from Twitch, and that request contains all the OAuth tokens and the refresh token that you need to be connected to the API, to the Twitch API. So it's a little bit of process, but it's possible to do it all inside Touch without the use of external websites. And if you download it from this twitcher.com, from derivative.ca, from the community website, get the Twitcher component, you can kind of figure out how all of this works. So this is what I have on APIs. Sorry, I jumped through this maybe too quickly, but if there's any question, do you have a question, Sahar?
No, thank you. I mean, for the most part, I'm in this universe these days. So, one of the things is actually is to adapt and learn to be patient when getting these authentications to work. So I don't have any further questions at this point. The bit about Twitter was very informative, and I will try Twitch, the Twitch method for Reddit, and see what comes up.
Yeah, that was what I found was when registering for the Reddit API, it had both of those things. As it had the client, what was it called? It had the client ID and the client secret. So those two combined would give you then the same process, would just be some changes in the URLs. But I think we could work that out fairly quickly. If you have questions when you're working on that, just let me know.
Thank you so much. Always, your help is always appreciated. Yeah.
Nice. Well, always appreciated what the people do with it. So. Yeah. So maybe from here.
Switch over to Rob MC.
Yeah, exactly. I know, Rob. Are you? Should I show this, or are you?
Yeah, if you want to. Well, I can either do a general rundown of the geotext.
That's probably a good
first,
idea.
If you want, and then you can show how you built up that that example particular.
I think the general rundown's good. Yep.
Cool. All right. So a couple months ago, I guess, in a previous InSession, talked about the text comp, which is more for drawing 2D text in panels. But a complementary component that we added as well is the Geotext Comp. So it is down here in the OpCreate. And so the Geotext Comp runs on a very similar engine, but it displays all of the text in 3D space to go through a renderer and uses all the instancing and materials and all of that kind of features. So this is the default one when you drop it down, so you can see it's a 3D viewer and in 3D space. We've got the text. But similar to the 2D text comp in panels, all the rendering is done directly in screen space. So the resolution will match exactly to whatever renderer you set it at. So it's not based on a particular texture size. It's all rendered. Each of these characters is a separate square billboard piece of geometry, and then the text is rendered onto that at whatever resolution the render is set at. So similarly, it's got a very similar set of properties to the text comp, all your fonts and all those regular kind of things. Font sizes are a little different because we're not dealing in 2D space, so it's not points. It's done in 3D space, so default size is just 1. And yeah, you'll recognize most of the other properties. The layout box, again, because we're dealing in 3D space that doesn't have a specific dimensions like a panel, we specifically set the layout box size. And so that's where word wrapping and alignment. So if I right align it, it's at the 20 mark there. So yeah, the basics are all kind of there. It's pretty intuitive. But some of the neat, fun things you can start getting into is when you using on the front page in mode. The default is text, so it just plays whatever's in the parameter, but you can also use the specification dat/chop. And like those in other places and in the text comp, that means it's going to take a dat table like this, and every row, the first row defines what columns, what the data is going to be, and then every row after that becomes a separate piece of text. So you can get up to thousands of pieces of text in your that all get rendered into your scene. And so each of those can have its own position, like TX, TY, TZ in your 3D space. And you can position them anywhere. One of the neat things, which I don't have an example right here, that we just added recently is chop input. So the specifications previously were all DATs, but now you can also send in a chop. So it's really handy if you've got your position data. And I think Marcus is going to show this afterwards, that you can specify all your positions and numerical data coming in through a chop. The channels just need to match what the columns are. So one of the other neat features to get once to deal with more specific layout kind of things is this append column. And so that's what a lot of these examples kind of show off, and just to jump into it a little bit. So when you use the append, it lays everything out using all the kerning and all the text positioning and stuff that you might want in a more precise font layout. So you can see, even though this is a whole bunch of different pieces of text, because the append column is on here, they're all laid out exactly into one continuous string. And then what you can do is, when they're appended, everything I add on top of that is relative to where they were. So TZ brings that line forward 1 unit, but they still all line up to where they would be if they were a continuous block. So that lets you do some fun things. So this example is all in the snippets that you can get to from the Geotext. So I won't dive into it too much because they're all kind of explained, but just a few little extras. So because this is a 3D space instead of the 2D panels, you can start positioning your text in 3D. So this, because they're all appended, and we're adding a 15-degree rotation to each letter. So each one is rotated 15 degrees more, and you get kind of curved text. And of course, you can animate those. So this example is running it through just an LFO to change the transforms a little bit. And so we can start sending off letters relative to each other. So this example is just touch on, I said there's a TX and TY, your regular transforms, translate channels. This is using LTY and LRY. So those are local transforms. So they only apply to the letter on that row. And so then the next row behind it will be appended back to where it was without that transform. So this is a fun way that you can animate just one letter in the another example, creating spirals and other patterns by like the text comp. I jumped into it back in that previous session. You can use our formatting directives, so those work as well with the spec.dat. So I can just change just the color of this letter, or just change the size, so you can get lots of crazy stuff happening to your text. And the other one really powerful feature is there is a function of the geotext now called layout text. So you give it a string and it returns a big list of all the positions where each character would be in that formatted string. So I'm using that in this case in a old text comp to typing the sentence in here. And so every time I type it, it runs this little script, and it tells me exactly where the X and Y positions of each letter are in that script. And then I can do whatever I want to transform those. I can project them onto something. In this case, I'm just doing some simple trig to project them out into the radius of a circle. So I take the page X and page Y, the 2D positions of the text, and then I project them using an angle onto into their transform here, and so they end up being in a 3D space. And so you can do dynamic stuff like that. This even includes typing here. You can see it has word wrap enabled. So the next letters keep their 2D position and start typing on that. So yeah, so with those positions said, you can project it onto 3D geometry, onto different curves or other surfaces, and use those XY positions as lookups onto geometry or whatever other kind of animation you want to run. So yeah, that's kind of a quick rundown of a lot of the features. I think Marcus is, unless there are any questions.
Sorry, I thought I was muted. Apparently I was not muted. I'm like eating, drinking, Sherry's on calls.
I wasn't too sure where the voice was coming from.
Sahar, did you have, you were talking about if you're not using, those are all examples with Latin text. How would that work with if we're looking at other scripts?
Parse, yeah.
Yeah, it technically works all the same. I don't have a good example offhand, but the turning in position will be for Arabic text or Persian text or Cyrillic or something. Should work pretty much the same. And the text comp does support right to left languages as well.
Is there a good website where we could maybe just fetch some text?
Yeah, I was just going to ask if for example, you could go to Conference of the Birds on Wikipedia and just grab some poetry.
I'm just sorry for the blank screen there. I'm just switching over to. Okay, yeah.
So if you scroll down, or maybe we have to change language. So yes, if you change that language, please.
Oops.
Oops.
Yeah.
That didn't happen. Didn't see it.
Nothing happened.
So-
Nothing to see here.
Yes, indeed. So when you see like further down, there's like these 4 verses. You could just grab, I guess, one of those, or yeah, that's a part of the poem.
You got it there, Marcus? Yeah.
Oh,
Oh.
look at that. Look at that.
I was restarting stuff. So that was copied off of the page. I can't quite tell.
I thought actually you grabbed an entire like 4 verses, but what I see is only two words.
That was actually
Marcus
I grabbed the whole verse, but
I'm on a different page.
Okay.
Okay, because you translated the page, you switched to the.
I switched to Persian language.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Can you just put it in the text, Marcus, in the chat?
Oh, that'd be interesting.
Oh yeah,
let's see.
that's also right. Yeah.
Let's see what Teams does with it.
Let's see.
There you go.
Oh, the Teams chat. Sorry. I see it there. Yeah. Let's try copy.
Also, Rob's window, for me, it's a bit lower resolution. I'm just wondering if this is on my side or is the same for you.
It looks a bit lower.
I think that's on your side, yeah.
Okay.
Ta-da! Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah, that's working quite nicely.
If we put things like that into, because that's work with that as well. So if we put it into a text that and split it into a couple lines,
yeah,
that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, the top is radio.
Because there's 2 verses there right now, right?
There's 4. Actually, there's a slight problem, which I don't understand why it happened in the basically migration of the text, but the verses are sometimes connected to some of the words are sometimes attached to each other where they shouldn't be. So that's a slight error in the process. Let me just have a look at the original text that you copied, Marcus. Okay, so in the text actually that you copied, that's also the same. So I guess maybe this is coming from Wikipedia. I wasn't paying attention to how everything is written, but for the most part, it looks great.
Oh, this is really where feedback like yours is helpful for us. We don't necessarily can notice these things.
Oh, you mean you don't have time to learn an entirely alien language in just a couple of months?
Yeah, unfortunately, I try to squeeze it in there somewhere, but
no, of course, I appreciate it, and I hope I can bug you going forward if there's any problems.
Oh, definitely.
It's incredibly, it's incredibly beautiful written language. I mean,
right?
I would be. I understand your trajectory completely. Wow.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
I'm ecstatic. I cannot wait to play around.
What are you going to do
this
first?
Oh, I mean, I think actually the first thing I'm doing is going to be doing these augmented reality calligraphy sculptures. So the idea is to build these 3D calligraphy sculptures with basically in combination with Blender. I think I would use Blender and then TouchDesigner to build these 3D sculptures, and then the next would be to combine that with the augmented reality experience.
Nice.
Cool.
Nice.
Yeah, really excited to see that.
Well, I can give you a quick, for the last 15 minutes or
Yes.
20 minutes or so. One example that you had sent was,
Yes.
very, very efficient way of scrolling text in this kind of a setup.
Yeah.
So you have, I think it's about 70 lines or 60 lines of text or something like this that are
Yes.
that are being translated in space. And this might be hard to see, but you're using a texture, and this is a really nice, clever idea, because you are taking the text into a text dot, and then are you getting a size here?
I'm using two text tops because to read the height basically from the first one, and then superimposing that to the second one.
That makes sense. So you get the text height, the required text height,
Yes.
and then you transform it and map it as a texture onto a tube, which works great. Now,
Yes, it works wonders.
yeah, and yeah, you can do this with the text comp as well. And I'll just go through the process in a moment. It is, and that might be hard to see on the video now on the stream, but one of the benefits that you get is that the rendering is really crisp and clear. Yeah, that's super.
That's one of the problems that I had previously, actually.
And yeah, we can just build this up fairly quickly here. We take the as Rob was mentioning, everything is kind of in rows. So if we want to offset things, or we want to define a new row for each line to move it into a tube. So I'm using a convert here, convert that to split this into a table, and then the Geotext Comp requires that the text that you're passing in has as a header a text field. So I'm using an insert and say text. So this is the text field there, and just for good measure put a null and create a geotext component and choose as mode specification.chop and plug this in. So now we have all the text on the same, each line in the same position. And this is where we can make use of the specification chop this specification chop feature parameter to offset each line efficiently. And for that, I just take a pattern. The pattern is really useful for this, the pattern chop, because I can create a sign that needs to have the same length as you have lines of text. So we can middle mouse click here and see there's 61 rows. The first row is the header though, so it's 60 rows. So the length here would be 60. Could script that. Obviously, like we could do something like up convert typing convert 1.num rows, I guess. Apparently not. Oh, convert 5 there. Okay, 60. Good. And we're going to create two channels. So currently this is oriented in the TXTY plane. So we're going to rotate it around or position them around ty and tz. Yeah. So we need two channels, ty, tz here. Pattern. And this is the nice thing about this pattern chop. You have these parameters like phase step per channel where you can just say 0.25 and you create this perfect circular thing right away. So not too much thinking involved there. And we can use this here as the specification chop. And probably increase, we already see that it's doing something, but I'm gonna increase the amplitude to maybe 20. Okay, so that might be a little bit big. The other thing we could also do actually, let's go back, let's say the amplitude stays 1, but we're gonna change the font size here and just take the font size down. And the nice thing is, because it's all being rendered, it really doesn't matter. The font can be as small as it needs to be to fit. It's always going to be super crisp. That is a really nice feature. Right, so now we have this along the x-axis, but we wanted to see this along the y-axis, or down the z-axis actually. So we would rotate this around the y-axis. So it's facing down by 90 degrees. And we probably can already not see it here because we need a material for it. Constant. Material. So you can see it. Geometry. There it is. Okay, so there's a couple problems here that we have to figure out. One is that we have to add a rotation to each line. Currently they're all straight up. And for that we can add in here, after the first pattern, we'll just add another pattern and make this a ramp that goes from 0 to, I'm just gonna go to 360. It's probably not correct, but anyway. Channel, append, and call it, because we're rotating around the x-axis, we gotta call this rx. And now we have the text properly rotated. I think the camera currently here sits at 5, yeah, so I might just move the camera to 0. Very nice. Okay. And to get a more dramatic effect, we can do a horizontal stretch here. Whoops, that was the prepared version. We can actually stretch the text horizontally without losing detail.
Mm-hmm.
And make this more dramatic as it was in your original. So the last step that's remaining is to move this all, to move this whole thing, to make it, two versions of it. And for that we can use an Lfo Chop. And the Lfo Chop should be a ramp, so it's always like looping from 0 to 1. Now we want 2 copies and we're going to instance that. So we're going to have tx 1 and 2. So we could create even more. And say that the phase is me.gen index times 0.5, I believe. So we have 2 ramps that are always on opposite ends, basically. And we need to shuffle this. Sequence all channels. So we have a 2 sample channel. And now put this on the instancing here. Translate up and offset this in TX. And now we see that our range is not perfect. So we'll add a mask to the whole thing. and change the range from, I tried that out before, it's like -20 to 20 or something like this, but that can be adjusted. And decrease the frequency. Now there's one more thing, and this was an interesting, there's so many solutions to this that you can pick from. What's happening currently is that all of the text, like what's happening with your text is that it's disappearing one letter by one letter at the end. And currently this text is disappearing as the whole block. But to fix that, one simple solution here was to use the near-far clipping planes of the camera to actually cut it off. So if we, for example, say, here we set it to 10 or something like this, that's again up wherever it should be, then we see that it's being cut off at this clipping plane, like it's just being clipped there. And this is something, Rob, I'm not sure if this is considered a bug or how can we make it a feature if it is a bug. Rotating this is amazing.
To actually spin the...
Rotating the instances. Because I think it's there might be a slight issue. But I don't know. Let's see. So,
Let's try it.
Control copy, Control V. Yeah. Where are we? Can I copy the whole thing? Okay. I should have the math as well. So we're going to use this here as the rotate operation. Just stuff to discover. And rotate the whole thing in TX, maybe? Range, alright, yeah, multi-add, let's make this here 20 or something as well. Not TX, no, RX, try Y.
Feedback comment, and then he was saying like it was his own comment, or?
Oh yeah, so there you can see already in great effect.
Okay, cool.
Or
Neat.
even on around Z. It's doing it per line.
Wow,
So,
that's amazing.
That's for free.
I was saying to Heather.
Oh, you mean I don't have to go in and do this like, one by one?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So, yeah, it's almost like, well, no, it's doing weird stuff, but it's just something that I found which is funny. It might not be the right thing it should be doing normally, I guess.
Yeah, it's applying the transformation to each, based on each line's origin instead of the origin of the entire block.
The funny thing is that is super powerful.
It's a very, it's a really cool effect.
So
Very cool.
Yeah. So this would be, that would be the practical example, essentially going from using the chops as well, the specification chops, and these are so easily animatable, like just animating the face here or something. Apps time dot seconds times 0.1 should start rotating the whole thing. So, yeah, there's lots to discover there. Lots of fun.
The possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
It's very exciting.
A nice, what Michelle, it was kind of a group session yesterday or 2 days ago. It was Ben and Michelle looking at the same thing. And Michelle was also mentioning a nice effect here is using the depth, working with the depth top to get your, I don't remember what it was. Depth space, you got to rearrange the depth space a little bit. To actually get the, I don't know what that was. It's like think I gotta decrease this a lot.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
But having this then to basically fade out the text towards the end or something like this. That's working
Yeah.
with the depth top very
yeah.
nicely. Yeah, so lots to play with on that end as well.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Text based on the depth and position and stuff too.
Sorry?
Everyone's freezing now.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Surprise.
And Isabel is coming in with just a little bit of delay.
Yeah, I know. I have to sort this out. I'm blaming it on the heat, but no doubt it's my computer. Well, that was good, guys.
Thank you very much. This was an enlightening session. Yeah.
It really makes you appreciate the written word.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing more done with the text components in general, because just the ability to do these kind of things wasn't there before. So, well set text. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah, it'll be interesting seeing. And if anybody's got suggestions or features, posting them on the forums, and you can keep track of what kind of things people are looking for in there.
Mm-hmm.
I got the petition going for justification.
Justification, yes.
for justification.
Yeah, I'll definitely look back at that. There's been a couple requests on that one.
Justification for what? Sorry?
Text?
Full justification so that the text spreads out to both the left and right margins.
Okay.
It's something that the font engine added not long before we went official, so there wasn't time to really get into it before release, but it's on the wish list. And, might get bumped up a few places after.
Good. And the other thing is on social media, every time that people out there are using new features of the official 2022 build, tag it TD 2022 so that we can see what you're doing. That would be great. Marcus, should we? Sorry, go ahead, Sahar.
No, sorry, I just said great. Thanks for mentioning that. It's good to know what the current tags used by TouchDesigner are, so we can definitely mention them.
Events coming up. Maybe Marcus, maybe you can just pull up community/events, because there's a lot of I was looking through it today, and there's a lot of things coming up all over the place now that we're not stuck at home anymore. But there are a few online things. A couple of music hackspace events. There's, I believe, I think there's one 2nd of 2 beginner workshops happening this weekend. And then there's a meetup June 30th when Greg is going to be talking with Mattia Urseg, co-creator of the Dandy Does It Twitch streaming show. We have a really good interview with them in the showcase. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, it's a really, really cool live stream on Twitch. I recommend checking it out, and maybe tuning in on the 30th to see Greg talk to Mattia about that. And I think one of the other things Greg wanted to do during that meetup was talk about how people are using the new official hence tagging with TD 2022.
Nice.
But there's more. I mean, there's lots of stuff here, so just as a general rule, it's good to check out, well, community in general, but then workshops and events are also really good to keep track of.
And it's nice, you have to be a little bit, you have to pay attention. We don't sort the dates by
Yeah, I was thinking that we need to do sort by
So by date.
date of event, not yeah.
We
Work in
already have
progress.
stuff in November. Wow, good. Anyway, yeah, nice.
Mhm.
Thanks everybody for joining, and thanks Sahar for especially staying up late, although it's Friday night and
Yeah.
you have
Thank
to
you
go
so
to
much.
a show now, I
you.
believe, as you said.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm going to a show that has Touch Designer as well involved as a part of it, so I can't wait.
Fantastic.
Thank you
Nice.
so much again for having me, and also this session. I
Yeah, it was
really
really
appreciate it.
Great having you on, and really keen to see what you do for the rest of the as
And
usual.
yes, I'm looking forward also to seeing you all in person again.
I know, big time.
Oh, Mutech. We'll see you
Tech,
there.
right?
Yes, indeed. Perhaps we'll see if I visit.
Okay. Nice.
Somewhere.
Somewhere.
Well, happy
All right.
Friday, everybody.
Yeah.
Thanks to everyone who tuned in, and we'll have another session, number 20, in about a month or so.
Mm-hmm.
And should we say who our guest is, Marcus?
Sure. Yeah.
Do you wanna?
You do.
Okay, Matthew Biederman. Very excited to have him on because,
Another Montrealer.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
All right. Well,
All right, guys.
with that, we'll say goodbye. And Sahar, stay on. I just gonna put the stream to rest. So
For sure.
see you all. Bye.
Bye.